We are back in our comfort zone for tonight because there are aces on the slate, and they're guys we know we can depend on them, feel good about them from a DFS perspective. We know the strikeouts should be there. We know we're doing a pitcher. That makes me feel good about DFS. We're talking about Lance Lynn and Yu Darvish. They are the top two guys. For tonight, we'll talk plenty about them for today as we get set for tonight's MLB DFS slate. Welcome on in to the FanDuel Fantasy Q&A. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to get you set for Thursday night's main MLB DFS slate. It is an 8-game slate with lock set for 7:05 for tonight. As always, no matter where you are watching the stream for today, you can get your questions in. If you're watching YouTube, put them in the chat section. I'll see them over there. We also are taking questions from Twitch and Facebook. So no matter where you're watching, hello, get those questions in. We'll get you set for today's slate of MLB DFS. And as mentioned, it is all about Yu Darvish and Lance Lynn for today as we pull up the player pool over on FanDuel.com. Darvish facing the Mets, Lynn facing the Tigers. To me, Lance Lynn is the top guy tonight by a decent margin. It's not just the fact that the matchup is better for him. He's facing the Tigers, high strikeout team, but also I feel better about the pitch count with Lance Lynn than with Yu Darvish. That doesn't mean I include over on my sheet here as we pull up that. Yu Darvish over his past 5 starts, 98, 76, 81, 93, 92. Is that 5? Yeah, okay, I can't count. Is that 5? Yeah, it's 5. Okay. Past 5 starts, he's been there. Whereas Lance Lynn in his past 5, 90, 111, 109, 104, 82. The 82 came in a doubleheader, so just a 7-inning game. You have to account for that for sure with pitch counts, but we can probably project Lance Lynn for 105 or so pitches, whereas Darvish is between 90 and 95. That's basically an extra inning. And that helps me quite a bit. So Lynn, better matchup, better pitch count. If I were picking the more effective pitcher, as you can see here, Darvish better in the 4 main key components of pitcher skill, but Lynn has the other components. So to me, I am going to go with Lance Lynn over Yu Darvish. Let's go to Facebook and take our first question from there. Talking to DJ. Hello, DJ. Happy Thursday. Griffin, Canning, or Adam Wainwright? I would go with Canning between the two, but I would be very wary of both. Canning gives up a lot of hard contact, and he walks a decent number of batters. That's why I can't feel good about him. He does get strikeouts, though. As you can see here, a 25% strikeout rate for Griffin Canning. This is over his past 6 starts with fewer changeups and more sliders. 25% strikeout rate facing the Mariners. They have a 25% strikeout rate as well, so I prefer Canning. Wainwright's facing the Reds. They are very powerful. He does a good job with contact suppression, so he may not be as susceptible to their witchcraft as other pitchers may be, but I would still go with Canning over Wainwright, but neither guy is someone I feel confident in for today. Let's go to Alvin. The Brewers seem popular tonight. How do you rank them for today? I think they're okay for one-offs. They are facing off with John Duplantier. Duplantier is probably going to be someone who is a lower strikeout pitcher, but he also kind of looks like a dude who might get some ground balls. Let's pull up the profile here for Duplantier over on Fangraphs and check out his minor league numbers, because there is where you'll see the ground ball rates start to creep in as being a concern. It's a small sample this year, so overlook that. Last year in the majors, mostly in the bullpen, but a 44% ground ball rate there. It was 46% in AAA back in 2019. Back in AA in 2018, 53%. Good numbers in the lower minors, too. I am worried that Duplantier will be someone who limits fly balls, keeps people on the ground. That does not say you can't stack against him. Like, I definitely think the Brewers are in play, but it means it's an imperfect pitcher to target with stacks, and they're obviously not a perfect team either. 78 WRC plus versus righties, 137 ISO, 27% strikeout rates. That's a little bit very, I guess, underwhelming. So I would say, Alvin, they are mostly in play for one-offs more so than for stacking as a result of, I mean, just like there aren't a lot of guys. I think the Travis Shaw is a pretty good one-off. I haven't seen enough from Yelich since he came off the injured list to feel great about him. Still striking out a lot, not generating a ton of heart. He had 2 barrels, I think, in like his first game back. Hasn't done a ton since then. Daniel Vogelbach works, so Garcia's solid. Shaw is solid. I'm okay with Vogelbach, but from a full stacking perspective, the Brewers kind of more of a low, like they're a consideration, but not one I feel tremendous about for today. Alvin also asked about the Diamondbacks on the other side of that game, facing Brett Anderson, another big ground ball guy. But we'll check out his numbers here this year because he hasn't been as restrictive as he has been in the past. You see here, this is over his 8 starts overall this year, a 50% hard hit rate against Brett Anderson. That's a pretty high number. 4.71 skill interactive ERA. Still getting ground balls, but if he's going to let it more hard contact, that does open the door for more wiggle room in stacking against him. As you see here, a 4.18 ERA this year. That's like, okay. He is letting up some impactful contact, never a big strikeout guy. So as we look at the numbers here, I want to look at specifically the batted ball numbers. 67%, 53%, 44%, 42%. So as he's gotten further removed from his injury, the ground ball rate has improved with each start. The hard contact has still been there. So I would say it's like they're okay. They've had good power numbers versus lefties this year. I'm not sure how much of that is it's a small sample as a result of, it being left-handed. They've been fine. I would say if I were choosing between stacking against Anderson versus Duplantier, I'd probably choose to stack it against Duplantier with the Brewers. But I would say they're both considerations, Alvin. Neither one a priority for me, but both teams I'd be okay with considering. But due to the fact that I'd expect both pitchers keep the ball on the ground pretty often, that's going to prevent them from being like really high profile plays for me for today. Let's talk to Michael over on YouTube. Is it still Minnesota, St. Louis, and Los Angeles as your top 3 stacks? As of now, yes, it does depend a bit on lineups because I mentioned this morning I wanted to see what the Royals would do with their lineup. If we got Jorge Soler in there along with Adalberto Mondesi, then I'd feel better about the Royals. As of right now, I don't know. The Cardinals are probably the team I'd bump down if we do wind up getting Mondesi and Soler back. So keep an eye on that lineup for the Royals specifically, because that would boost them if we get some solid options there. Angels, I still feel good about facing Sheffield. He's another guy who can get some ground balls, but not as big of a ground ball guy as some others. You see here, he's been tinkering with some stuff, trying to rekindle the flame he had last year. This is 4 starts with fewer sinkers and more changeups. Strikeout rate 12%, 10% walk rate, 41% hard hit rate. That's above the league average of 38 or 39%. The fly ball rate lower than average, so that's going to keep it from being like a fantastic stack, but I would still say it's a pretty good stack for the Angels for today. Twins, I feel fine about. They're facing Chris Bubich. He was really good against them last week, so I don't think there's any like stack today where I'm like, yes, 100% guaranteed they will go off. But I would say, as far as the teams I feel most comfortable about right now, it would be the Twins, the Cardinals, and the Angels, with the Royals having some upward mobility to potentially move up the list. Let's talk to Kyle on YouTube, fairly new to DFS. Hello, Kyle. Welcome. What is your process for putting together a cash game lineup compared to tournaments? So for cash games, the big difference for me is I want to maximize balls in play, which means targeting low strikeout pitchers effectively. So for cash games, I'll be more interested in teams like the Diamondbacks here because they're facing a low strikeout guy in Brett Anderson. More interested in the Angels in the low strikeout ways against Sheffield. Still not super into the Giants against Davies. It's a cool temperature today, 58 degrees, not a great part for stacking. I think the Giants definitely work. Like I talked about them this morning as being a team I'd be okay using, but I'm not going to bump them up for cash games by any means. I want to go for safety, and the safest stacks tend to be the ones where you maximize balls in play, limit strikeout rate. You just want to give yourself more chances at points scored. I would also say the other difference for me is that we talked a lot about avoiding pitchers who give up a lot of walks. That's less of a thing for cash games. For cash games, I'm more okay flooding the base paths, getting those 3-point bumps for a walk here and there, stuff like that. So we talked about Justin Dunn. I don't know. I haven't looked into his numbers recently, but because he hasn't been on the main slate in a bit, but someone like him, I'd be more willing to stack against him in cash games versus tournaments because he does walk a lot of guys. That gets us, points are points. So I'm more willing to take that route there. As far as pitching goes, I kind of play it the same way for both cash games and tournaments. I'll take more risks in tournaments, obviously, but the overall goal for both is maximize strikeouts because strikeouts give you a floor. We talk about how strikeouts give you a ceiling, but they give you a floor too. Because the one I always turn to is Tyler Glasnow against the Blue Jays pretty early this year. He let up 4 runs in the first inning, but because he also had 4 strikeouts in the first inning, he actually scored 3 points. So strikeouts do give you a ceiling, but they also give you a floor. So I think that for me, I'm okay taking risks in tournaments, but for cash games, it's kind of the same thing at pitcher. I want to maximize strikeouts, maximize total points scored, get that there. So it's not actually a huge difference outside of targeting some slightly different stacks where I do want to maximize, minimize strikeouts, be more willing to take teams that may draw a lot of walks for that game. And then for pitchers, just generate as many strikeouts as possible, no matter what the game type may be. I'm more willing to take a rough matchup in a tournament, more willing to take some risk there, but just the overall thought process of getting the best pitchers, maximizing strikeouts. That is true for me, no matter whether it's a cash game or a GPP. DJ, any updates on Tommy Pham with his dugout incident, yesterday's game with the collision with Ha-Seong Kim? I have not seen any personally. I've not also checked the news though, because I'm mostly focused on the slate for today, and I'm assuming Pham's not going to go. So I've not checked in too much on Tommy Pham. Hopefully he's okay, because that didn't look good. And Pham, he dealt with like a bunch of eye issues back in the day, so you kind of root for him. You hope that he can be someone who is successful. Had injuries earlier this year too, so you root for Tommy Pham, hoping he's okay, but I have not seen anything on my end. DJ, stack the Giants against the Red Hot Cubs. Stack the Giants against the Cubs, Miami pending the weather, or the Mets versus San Diego. I think the Giants are probably going to be the number one for me. Tyler Anderson does get some strikeouts, 23% this year. The Marlins will strike out too, a 28% strikeout rate versus lefties. Not a great park for offense, as you can see here in Pittsburgh. And we do have the weather to potentially worry about. So I'm okay not going at the Marlins. The Mets facing San Diego. They're facing Yu Darvish. Definitely don't stack there. Yu Darvish is the number 2 pitcher for me for tonight. So among those options, I'd say the Giants. I think the Giants are actually like a legit option. If we're going to grade them relative to, Alvin asked about the Diamondbacks and the Brewers. Let's grade the Giants relative to them, because I think they're all kind of in the same tier for tonight. I would say the Giants are probably my preferred option there. It's a bad, I don't know. It's tough to rank out those 3. Maybe I would go with the Brewers. I'm going to go Giants. Let's go Giants. I'm going to go Giants as my top stack between those options. I feel good about the hard contact Davies is allowed, the low strikeout rate, the overall team strength. I think the Giants are a pretty decent team, especially against the low strikeout pitchers. So I think the Giants grade out pretty well there. I would go with the Brewers by a hair and then the Diamondbacks, but those 3 teams kind of in the same tier for me. Definitely a tier below the top options we've discussed with the Twins, Cardinals, Angels, and then the Royals potentially, depending on who plays. But I think those teams are all consideration as like second tier stacks you could turn to if you want to differentiate, if you need to get some one-offs, or if you're just, if you're not convinced by the other options on today's slate. If we're not going at Darvish or Lynn, I know we've had a couple of questions on some lower salaried pitchers. The one guy, barring weather, I would be willing to look at is Eliezer Hernandez. Facing the Pirates, Hernandez is coming off the 60-day IL. So you're going to see, I'm assuming, an injured list tag by him. Nope. Yep. Okay. So you see the injured list tag there. That's always a concern because guys coming out the injured list may not be fully stretched out, especially with Hernandez. He's coming off the 60-day injured list. So it's been a hot second since we saw him on the mound. But in AAA, he went 44, 55, and 79 pitches. So I think if from like a pitch count projection perspective, you can probably put Hernandez around 90 or so. They don't tend to let him go super deep into games to safeguard him from, when teams start to figure out what he's doing. But when he's out there, he's good. Last year, a 3.17 skill interactive ERA, 32% strikeout rate, 5% walk rate. Pirates, not a high strikeout team, but also not a good team. They don't get a lot of pop out of their bats. So I would say, to me, I'd be comfortable using just Darvish and Lynn. But if you want a third option, I would say Hernandez is actually kind of interesting at $6,800 for tonight. Alvin, would single entry stacks be Minnesota, St. Louis, Los Angeles, or switching it up? I feel like I would probably be pretty into the Twins there because I don't know what the interest level in them will be today against Bubic. If we pull up the implied totals here, the Cardinals number has gone down. I mentioned that before. It was 4.33, I believe. When I looked earlier, I should probably select a slate. That might help. And the slate's not available. Okay, well, having some issues here. Let's go over to the batters. This is going to be all games. So this does include the early games as well. So keep that in mind. There's no Colorado. The Brewers are number 1 in the slate for an implied total perspective. Angels number 2, Royals 3, then Twins. And then the White Sox against Mize. Not super interested there. Mize has been pretty good recently. So if we're looking for a team that may go overlooked, it would wind up being St. Louis. I think it's fair that their implied total has gone down because they're not like the world's best team, and Gutierrez has looked good in his AAA start so far this year, so I'm not going to like push back on it. But in the one start Gutierrez made in the majors this year, he had like a 16% strikeout rate and I think a 10% walk rate. Didn't let up a lot of impactful contact, but looked okay, I would say. There were, I would feel okay stacking against him is the way that I'd phrase it based on what I saw in that first game. I think my internet is acting up here. Oh, well, I'll try to figure that out later on. Anyway, my internet is acting up. Sweet. Okay. So that'll probably pop out there. Either way, let me see if I can reconnect. You're going to see my Wi-Fi stuff here. Orange cats. Sure. Let's connect to that. That sounds great. I don't know how it's actually still up on the screen, but somehow it is because it booted me off the Wi-Fi. And hey, we're still here, I think. Let me refresh the page. It's working again. Somehow that actually, I don't know why it was still able to share when I had no internet, but it still worked. Anyway, internet's back. So I guess we'll pull this back up whenever we get a chance. Actually, I think it may have logged me out of the screen share as well. So we'll get that pulled back up and go back over to Fangraphs and check out Gutierrez and see what he's doing. Because, again, the numbers in AAA honestly weren't bad. He had like a 30% strikeout rate across 3 starts. He had a low walk rate, didn't let up, his ERA was pretty decent. So I think that based on that, I can understand why the implied total has come down for the Cardinals, but I still think they're a pretty decent stack. So, Alvin, if you're looking for a team that might go a little bit overlooked, I would say that the Cardinals are a team that's at least interesting there. And if you think about like from a prioritization perspective, as we do get the screen share back up here, from a prioritization perspective, I don't think many people will prioritize the Cardinals for today. Look at Gutierrez. He did have just kind of middling numbers or not great numbers. I don't want to say that. He's a AAA pitcher. So like, that's an accomplishment to make it AAA. Like, good on him. But the numbers were not great. In 2019, 6.04 ERA, 19% strikeout rate. I would bet that pitcher is still in there somewhere, which is why I still think the Cardinals are a decent option. Have not seen their lineup yet to get a judge on if we can feel really good about it. I'd feel really good if Yadier Molina were in there, but we'll see how that plays out. But either way, I do think that the Cardinals are a team that might go overlooked if you're looking for something for that from a single entry perspective for you, Alvin. Kyle, who would you prioritize if using Arizona as a value stack? Okay, so they're facing Brett Anderson. Let's pull up the roster resource here because we can do it roster resource over on Fangraphs. You can pull up their last couple of lineups versus a left-handed pitcher, or their consider most recent lineups. So last time they faced a lefty was yesterday. We had Ketel Marte batting second, Eduardo Escobar batting third, Carson Kelly hit leadoff. Pavin Smith was still in there. That's interesting. Christian Walker got in there because it was a lefty. Okay, so gives us an overall idea of who will play for today. Let's pull up their numbers versus lefties. And they've been good this year against lefties, as you saw before. Like, they've got good power numbers. This will all be small sample-ish because it is versus lefties, but we can see who's been doing well to start things off this year. Eduardo Escobar has been good overall, so I'm more willing to trust the fact that he's been good in a small sample versus lefties. Kelly is a good overall hitter, so that makes sense that he would do well. I would say Kelly and Escobar are going to be two guys you'll probably want to turn to there. I want to dig into Ketel Marte to see how he does historically versus lefties, because another switch hitter within this lineup, good overall hitter. Actually, check out his game log first to see how he's been playing since he came back from his injury, just to make sure the overall strength has been there for Ketel Marte. So we can press the shift bar and then click and then select all of this, and we'll see a 17% strikeout rate, 163 ISO, which is not terrible, but also not great. He's not stealing bases right now. The StatCast data on him in that same sample, as we'll select it once again, we see that he has a 4.9% barrel rate, but both those barrels have come within the past 4 games. 48% hard hit rate, that is above average. Launch angle, below average. So I would say that Marte is someone I'm good using, mostly because I feel good about what he's been doing. And overall, Ketel Marte is someone we can feel solid about versus lefties. So I would say if we're looking at this Diamondbacks team, we feel good about Ketel Marte. Let's go with him. Put that there. Let's put Eduardo Escobar. I believe he's third base eligible. Yep. So we'll do that there. And then I want to go with Carson Kelly. And we'll put him a catcher / first base. If we do that, and then we go here, we'll plug in Lance Lynn. 29.60 left. So we're probably scrambling for some sort of value play. Christian Walker has not had a good year, but let's dig in and see if we have reason for hope that he may improve as the season goes along. We could try to look at his batted ball numbers, determine whether he, is maybe having some bad luck. So far this year, Walker, 3.2% barrel rate, low strikeout rate, which is good, but everything else is pretty gross. So I would say that Walker is like an option. I don't feel good about him just because like the numbers this year have been really bad. Let's check out the batted ball numbers lately to see if they're trending up. Okay. He's had some hard contact recently. He had a barrel back on the 10th. That was before the injury though. So past 4 days, not a whole lot cooking. I would probably be kind of skittish about using Walker. I think for me, these are the 4 main guys I want to go to. And then let's see if we can dig up someone else here. I feel like those are probably the 3 main guys for me would be Marte, Escobar, and Kelly. And then maybe you go Walker. But I think that those are probably going to be the guys who I would feel best about there within this Diamondbacks stack. Got a question from DJ over on Facebook. Jared Kelenic, is he a viable play at $2,400? We had the Mariners facing Canning. I did mention that Canning lets up a lot of hard contact and decent number of fly balls. That game is in Los Angeles, which is better than being in Seattle. So I would say he's viable. I'm not going to say that he's a core play because Canning does get strikeouts, and I don't like using hitters facing high strikeout pitchers, but I do think that he's an option because Kelenic is a talented batter. $2,400 tends to be pretty high in the order. I would not talk you out of Kelenic. I would say there might be better options elsewhere, and the teams were more inclined to stack as far as lower salary guys who really do fit what we're looking for. Check out Edward Olivares and see what his salary is. He is minimum salary. So I think Olivares might be a guy I'd prefer lower salary outfield who checks those boxes. Jarrell is asking Tyler Anderson. Okay, facing the Marlins. So we got a question before about the Marlins from a stacking perspective. And I said, no. I think that if you were to ask me, would you rather use Anderson as a pitcher or stack against him? I would say I'd rather use Anderson as a pitcher. So Jarrell, from that perspective, I actually do think that he is an option. Like I mentioned before, 23% strikeout rate this year for Anderson. He is facing the Marlins with a 28% strikeout rate. Decent park for pitching because temperatures is okay for today, 70 degrees, and then it's not a great park overall for hitting. So I think that he's actually kind of an okay option. He's not one I'm leaping to use by any means. I much prefer to go with Darvish or with Lynn or to go take a chance on Hernandez, but 6, 7, and 7 strikeouts. That's pretty good. Atlanta's a good team. San Francisco facing a lot of righties there. Cubs pretty decent against lefties. He's faced some tough competition. He's been okay. So I would say between if we're talking about lower salary guys, I'd say Anderson is not bad and I'm willing to use him, but I prefer probably Hernandez over Anderson for today if forced to choose between those two. Also, Walker. Yeah, so Jarrell likes Christian Walker. Like I said, I'm not going to write him off. I think that you could definitely go there. I just get a little bit worried about guys coming off injury, playing. You're asking about Taijuan Walker. Sorry about that. Wrong Walker. My bad, Jarrell. Taijuan Walker facing the Padres. He went 80 in his most recent start. I think that was his first one off the injured list potentially. DJ, don't use Billy Hamilton. Definitely not. I wouldn't use Walker, low strikeout team with the Padres, so I'd prefer to go Anderson. Also prefer Hernandez among the lower salary guys. Hope that helps for you, Jarrell. And Hernandez, my favorite value play. If you want someone else, Anderson probably would be the place I would go there. That is all the time that we have for today here on the FanDuel Fantasy Q&A. And as a programming note, I am not here Friday, Monday, or Tuesday, but do not worry. Tom Vecchio will have you covered. He has the FanDuel Fantasy Q&A Friday and Tuesday. Monday, it's a 2-game slate, I believe, because of the MLB draft. So it's a pretty gross one. So I would say probably not baseball that day, but there will be a stream at 4 o'clock, likely with Tom. So make sure you check us out. Make sure you subscribe. FanDuel, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter. And follow Tom on Twitter at DFS_Tom. I'll be back with you next Wednesday to talk more baseball. Again, follow Tom at DFS_Tom. I am at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, their video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the FanDuel Fantasy Q&A.